Have you ever had that feeling, that subtle creeping sense that you're just stuck? The weeks are turning over maybe faster than you'd like, but somehow you feel like you're in the exact same place. You're going through the motions, maybe scrolling a bit too much, feeling that familiar guilt, telling yourself, okay, this week things will be different. Then, well, nothing really changes. We all talk about it, right? Wanting to get better at English or live healthier, be more focused, maybe more confident or creative. Yet, somehow, we often find ourselves defaulting back to those same old, comfortable, safe patterns. And that brings us to the core truth we're really going to dive into today. Something our sources kept coming back to, a really powerful principle. If you change nothing, nothing will change. It sounds so simple, almost too simple, doesn't it?
It really does. And yet, it's often those straightforward truths we tend to ignore or maybe just put off. We tell ourselves we're waiting for the right time.
Yeah, or for that big burst of motivation to hit.
Exactly. Or for circumstances to line up perfectly.
Yeah.
But that one day, well, it can so easily become code for never.
Mm.
And what's really interesting there, and something the sources dig into, is how that promise of one day can actually become its own kind of invisible fence.
An invisible fence. How so?
Well, behavioral scientists talk about this thing called status quo bias. Basically, we're sort of wired to prefer things as they are. Even if things aren't great, the current situation is known. Change, on the other hand, feels uncertain. It represents a potential loss, even if it's just imagined.
Okay, so even if we want something better, the fear of losing what we have now or the fear of the unknown holds us back.
Precisely. So our mission today really is to unpack why we hold back. Why does change feel so heavy sometimes, mentally? And maybe more importantly, how can even the smallest shift, what we're calling a small new choice, how can that gently nudge past these blocks and start opening a new door for you?
It's like exploring a quiet but really powerful truth. It's fascinating because, like you said, holding back isn't always a conscious thing, is it? It's not like we wake up and say, I choose stagnation today.
No, absolutely not. Our sources suggest it's deeper than that. Change inherently feels uncomfortable, even if we consciously want the outcome.
Right.
Think about it. The unfamiliar demands more brain power, more cognitive energy,
Right.
and our brains are, well, incredibly efficient. They want to conserve that energy.
So it's less about being lazy and more about our brains just trying to be efficient, prioritizing the known path.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
It's linked to our primal wiring.
Yeah.
And this connects to something called decision fatigue, too. The more choices we feel we have to make, especially big ones, the more likely we are to just default to the easiest, most familiar option, which is often doing nothing different.
Exactly. If you think about it neurologically, our brains are literally wired to repeat what's familiar. Those neural pathways are like well-worn roads, deep grooves.
Paving a new path, even if it leads somewhere better, takes effort. It requires energy. And summoning that energy feels incredibly difficult when you're already feeling tired, or maybe a bit discouraged, or you perceive some kind of risk involved.
So we resist change not because we're inherently weak or flawed, but because on some level, our system is trying to protect us.
That's a great way to put it. Protecting us from potential failure, maybe from looking foolish, or just from investing effort into something that might not give us a clear, immediate payoff.
That makes so much sense because the way we often phrase it to ourselves is, oh, I'll start tomorrow, or I'm just too busy right now, or maybe I don't even know where to begin with this. But underneath those perfectly reasonable excuses, as the source material really highlights, the unspoken fear might actually be, what if I try really hard and I still don't succeed? What if I put in all this time and energy and, well, nothing actually changes for the better, and so we freeze?
We freeze.
Yeah.
Or we wait. Or we distract ourselves, right? Endless scrolling, snacks, busy work. Anything but that one slightly challenging thing we know deep down might actually move us forward.
And here's a thought from the research that's both powerful and gentle. Avoiding the change doesn't actually protect your peace, it just delays your growth.
That really brings up an important question that emerged from the material. What if we tried reframing that fear? So instead of getting stuck on, what if I fail? What could possibly open up if we shifted our internal question to what might happen, what might open up if I just try? Because doing nothing, not trying, that's also a choice. It's a decision. And every time you choose to stay exactly where you are kind of by default also choosing to stay away from that different life you say you want.
That's a hard truth, but an important one.
It is. But it's crucial not to beat yourself up about this.
Yeah.
This isn't about assigning blame. It's more about understanding these hidden gears that keep us stuck, and then figuring out how to gently, subtly disrupt them. You're not behind schedule, you're not broken.
Yeah.
You're just standing at the edge of what could be next. You're simply becoming.
Okay, so let's unpack that disruption part. How do we actually do it? Our sources seem to really emphasize that the secret often lies in that first tiny yes, that small step. You absolutely don't need to overhaul your entire life overnight. In fact, trying to do that is often the fastest way to burn out and give up, right?
Absolutely.
It's overwhelming.
So maybe today, the focus is just on making one tiny new choice. That's where the real momentum starts to build.
Yeah, that initial friction is the hardest part.
Real lasting change, as the research shows again and again, it rarely starts with a big bang. No need for those grand New Year, New Me pronouncements.
Instead, it seems to quietly build up in these small, almost ordinary daily moments. Big results, counterintuitively, often come not from huge efforts, but from tiny, consistent choices that add up over time. They compound.
And what's really fascinating there is how these tiny choices tap into the power of what psychologists call habit loops.
Yeah.
The cue, routine, reward system that our brains run on.
Right, the habit loop.
The sources shared a brilliant example. Somebody kept saying, I just don't have time to learn English. Felt impossible.
Yeah.
Then one day, they stopped trying to find this big chunk of time. Instead, they set a timer for just 5 minutes. 5 minutes, and they simply listened to an English podcast during that time.
Just 5 minutes, okay.
That was the small new choice, no pressure, no huge goal, just 5 quiet minutes.
Yeah.
And they did it again the next day, and the next, and eventually those 5 minutes naturally stretched to 10, maybe 20. And soon, listening to English started to feel, well, normal, almost automatic. The key wasn't the amount of time initially, but the fact that they stopped waiting for the perfect conditions and just started.
Wow. So that small, consistent action didn't just add a new habit, it actually started to change how they saw themselves.
Exactly. They shifted from being someone who doesn't have time to someone who makes 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It's a subtle but profound identity shift.
That's so powerful. And it reminds me of another key idea from our sources. You don't necessarily rise to the level of your big goals. You tend to fall back to the level of your systems, your daily habits.
That's a great quote, yeah. James Clear talks about that.
So for you listening, what could that tiny new choice be? Maybe it's writing down one new English word each day. Just one. Or perhaps choosing the stairs instead of the elevator, just once today.
Or saying no to one distracting notification on your phone.
Or saying yes to a 5-minute walk outside, or maybe repeating one English sentence out loud when you wake up.
Yeah, anything that simple.
The core insight here seems to be that you don't need this huge wave of motivation to wash over you before you start. You just need to initiate one tiny action. Move your hand, open the book, say the word, make one slightly better choice than you might have yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Progress isn't really about hitting perfection right away. It's about establishing a new pattern, however small it seems.
And when you deliberately choose that new pattern, even a tiny one, your future self starts to subtly but definitely shift direction.
And this brings up another really important point that the research tackles head on.
Yeah.
This pervasive myth of perfectionism.
Oh, yes, the perfection trap.
Perfection, as one source beautifully put it, is often a beautiful lie.
A beautiful lie. I like that. How so?
Well, whispers things like, wait until you're perfectly ready,
Yeah.
or do it absolutely flawlessly, or don't bother doing it at all. Everyone will judge you if you make a mistake. Sound familiar?
Oh, absolutely. That internal critic can be loud.
And so what happens? We fall into analysis paralysis. We get stuck. We rewrite the same email draft 10 times. We hesitate to speak English out loud because we're afraid of mispronouncing something.
Or we avoid going to the gym because we don't feel fit enough yet, ironically. Or put off that difficult conversation or starting that new project because we just don't feel ready enough. So what's the antidote then? What does this all mean for you listening right now?
The truth, according to this deep dive, seems to be you don't have to be perfect to start. You just have to start to get better. It's about progress, not perfection.
Exactly. And progress is usually pretty quiet, isn't it? It's often messy.
Yeah, definitely not always Instagram worthy.
No, it's full of try-agains, full of stumbles. And crucially, it doesn't always feel like success in the moment. Sometimes progress feels like, ugh, I only managed to study for 5 minutes today. Or I only understood like half of that podcast episode.
Or, wow, I made 3 grammar mistakes in that one conversation. Right. But guess what? That is still progress. Because you showed up. You did the thing. You spoke. You listened. You learned something.
And that action, however imperfect, is infinitely more valuable than doing nothing because you are waiting for perfection. It's more than you did yesterday.
Exactly. So maybe try letting go of that mental highlight reel. You know, the one where you imagine yourself speaking perfect, fluent English effortlessly from day one?
Or waking up at 5 a.m. every single day without fail, full of energy.
Yeah. Or always eating perfectly clean and journaling profound thoughts and smiling serenely through it all. Life just isn't a flawless performance.
No, it really isn't.
It's much more like a collection of imperfect, messy, real days all strung together. And you are absolutely allowed to grow slowly. You have permission.
That's reassuring.
Our sources are really clear on this. Consistency, showing up again and again, always beats short bursts of intensity in the long run. And done, even imperfectly done, is always, always better than perfect, but never started.
So the advice is, speak with mistakes. Study even when you're tired. Move forward even if your voice shakes a little.
Yes, absolutely. Nobody's journey starts smoothly. Think about it. Every fluent speaker you admire was once a beginner who sounded unsure.
True?
Every strong, healthy habit was once an awkward, forced experiment. You're allowed to stumble. You're allowed to restart 50 times if needed. Don't measure yourself by how perfect it looks on the outside. Measure yourself by how honest you're being with your consistent effort. If you keep showing up, keep trying, keep learning, something will shift.
In fact, something is already shifting the moment you make that small choice to try. Let's just pause on that for a moment. Maybe you have been waiting. Waiting for that perfect plan to materialize, waiting for a sudden surge of energy or the right words or just the ideal mood to strike. But deep down, you probably already know this truth we've been exploring. Nothing changes if nothing changes. And that change, it doesn't have to be some huge earth-shattering event. It really can be as small as one deep breath before you react to something stressful.
Or one kind word you offer yourself after making a mistake, instead of the usual criticism.
One page read in a book, one extra block walked on your way home.
One new sentence spoken out loud in English, even just to yourself. Your future self isn't built in some single, dramatic, overnight transformation. It's actually built in these small, quiet, consistent choices you're making right now, today.
Yeah.
You don't need to feel like you have to fix your entire life all at once. You just need to find the willingness to subtly shift one small thing. And the rest, because of the power of compounding habits we talked about, it will often start to organically follow from there.
It's like a ripple effect.
Exactly. And remember, you are not behind. You are not broken. You are simply always becoming. And just one small, maybe slightly scary act of courage each day can genuinely open the door to a completely different path for your life.
So as we start to wrap up this deep dive, maybe just hold on to this quiet but really powerful reminder. No more waiting. No more searching for the elusive perfect timing. Just one honest step forward. And I invite you, gently, with absolutely no pressure. What is one small change, however tiny, that you feel ready or maybe just willing to make today? Don't overthink it. Don't make it complicated. Just maybe feel into it for a second.
Yeah, trust that first little nudge.
It might feel insignificant, and that is perfectly, profoundly okay. Because remember, all the big changes you desire, they almost always begin in these unseen, often quiet, everyday moments.